Welcome to the second San Diego Foundation webinar focused on the Foundation's efforts with the San Diego COVID-19 Community Response Fund. Today's webinar is going to be focused on how grants and loans are made through our fund efforts. This photo was taken almost 1 year ago when I was brand new to the foundation. And every day since that time, I count my good fortune to have this position, to do this good work that we do, and to have the incredible colleagues upon whom I rely every single day. Because I'm what stands between you and the incredible content providers and subject matter experts that we have enlisted to join us today, I'll make my remarks brief. So our agenda is again talking about our fund, the great leadership council that we have assembled, talking about the grant making that we have done to date and where grant making is going to be going in the future, having a really good description of our small business and nonprofit loan program, and then also telling everyone who's with us today how you can help. And we want to make sure we leave plenty of time for your questions and being able to address each and every one of them. Again, I'm joined by a group of rock stars with the San Diego Foundation and our Community Response Fund's Leadership Council. These are great people. I'm sure you're going to enjoy listening to them if you haven't heard from them already, but it's really a remarkable group of great people from whom we're all going to learn something today. Of course, as we're all continuing to get used to our life in Zoom, there are some great ways by which we want to make sure to have this webinar move smoothly and to make sure that we can hear from you and register any questions or comments that you have. So please, of course, make sure to keep your microphone muted during this presentation. And then please unmute yourself when called upon for a question. And then also, you can make sure to use the chat function to register any questions you might have, or if you have any comments that you'd like to make during this presentation. Also, if you take a look at the participants function, and if you click on that icon, you're going to be able to see all the individuals who are with us today. And as soon as you turn on that participants button, you're then going to be able to see a raise hand function in the lower right corner of your screen. That's the best way by which you can register your interest in sharing a comment or asking a question. As many of you know, our fund launched just about 2 months ago, and we have all been working so hard to make this fund a reality and be able to make a difference for those who've been disproportionately affected due to this pandemic crisis. So at about May 12th or 13th, we began working with so many great leaders across San Diego to pull together the fund and have it launch on Monday, March 16th. And I've been really gratified with the fund, and Brian Zumbano will share more details about where the fund is in terms of its total gifts and grants to date. But we've had some really remarkable partners join us in this effort. And you can see all the businesses that have been listed here who have made significant contributions of their time, their talent, and their treasure to help move our Community Response Fund to be a real place of resilience and a vehicle by which so many have come to make it through, or at least survive through this pandemic crisis. And of course, I have to give great cheer to San Diego County Supervisor and co-chair of the County COVID-19 Subcommittee, Nathan Fletcher, who's been an integral part of this from the very beginning. Also, our fund would not be where it is today if it wasn't for incredible philanthropy. And here you'll see a citation and listing of all the foundations that have really dug deep to be a part of this effort and have made just such a remarkable difference. Of course, I want to highlight the Hervey Family Fund here at the San Diego Foundation. The Hervey family have committed $2.5 million to this effort. $1 million of it was an outright commitment, and the other $1.5 million was a challenge grant that Brian Zumbano will share more details about later. Also, you can't think about a great community effort unless you think about it in terms of its sheer numbers. And so this is our totals to date. So, again, these images are just images of comfort, resilience, hope, and relief. And that's what this has been all about. Most importantly, we've seen this as a great outpouring of community support with more than 3,000 donors. Our corporate support has been remarkable. Almost a third of all the gifts that have come in have been by corporations, which is really unheard of and is just such a great outpouring of local support. We've had a number of matching gifts, and those have been great leveraging opportunities by which individuals, corporations, and foundations have been inspired to give the best gifts that they possibly can. And then lastly, it really has been the San Diego Foundation's commitment since March 13th, when we began the work on this fund, that every single private contribution that comes into this fund is going out without any fees from the San Diego Foundation. 100% of every contribution and fund transfer from our donor advised funds is going immediately into this fund with distribution to nonprofits that are on the front lines of COVID relief. So let me turn to our first speaker today, and that is the indefatigable Connie Matsui. Connie is an Uber volunteer for the foundation and has been doing a remarkable job leading our community impact team as its interim leader. I am just so lucky that we've had Connie here, who's just marshaled these efforts, built great relationships across the ecosystem of nonprofits in San Diego that is not only benefiting us today, but I know will benefit our organization and really all nonprofits in the future. So Connie, all yours.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you for the privilege of introducing the Leadership Council. The Leadership Council is a constellation of experts and civic leaders who bring various bases of knowledge and expertise to this enormous enterprise that we have with the COVID-19 Community Response Fund. So I'm going to be talking specifically about the Executive Committee and the Granting Committee. So the Executive Committee, as you can see, is representative of a cross-section of our community in terms of the sectors they represent, the expertise they bring, the perspective and wisdom they have to share. And we've been particularly honored to have them as our executive committee. They've also provided the initial direction for the use of the Community Response Fund, in that it really started with a focus on basic needs: food, financial assistance, medical support to those who have been disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 crisis. At the same time, they also gave us the freedom to respond to emerging needs as they came to our attention, and I'll be describing that a little later. The other principle that came from these early discussions is that the funds were not intended to provide every nonprofit with operating support, but more to help these nonprofits who were focused on disproportionately impacted populations meet increased and emergency demands for services. I have the great pleasure of working most closely with the Granting Committee. Again, a group of individuals who are well known for their leadership in San Diego, and bring a cross-sector perspective to what we're trying to achieve with the grants that we're making. And as you may have noticed, we have someone who has been a driving force on both of the executive committee, the granting committee, and has just been an incredible catalyst and inspiration for the work that we're doing on behalf of the community. And so we thought that it would be a great place to start to describe how grants are made by hearing from Pedro about why he decided to place funds with the San Diego Foundation's efforts. Pedro?
Thank you, Connie. I do have to start by saying that there is nothing interim about the community impact that one Ms. Connie Matsui makes in our community. It has been extraordinary. I concur with Mark as well, that you are a blessing for this community, and what you've been able to accomplish here in the midst of an emergency is nothing short of spectacular. Thank you. And no matter where you are, you always make a great community impact. I also want to thank the staff and the donors of the San Diego Foundation. You're really a community for having SDG&E, myself representing the 4,200 employees of the company, to participate in this webinar. And probably a good place to start is to talk a little bit about our perspective leading into the COVID crisis and how that led us to the San Diego Foundation. We knew that this was going to be a bad and protracted problem. Based on what we first saw in Seattle, and then what we saw in China and Italy and other countries, conversations that we had with public health experts and the like. And we knew that more resources were going to be needed to meet this challenge than any one organization could give. And we knew that to be able to get to the most vulnerable San Diegans in our community, it really was going to need to be a Herculean effort between a lot of the corporations in the region, a lot of the family foundations in the region, and certainly and even individual contributors who decided to give to these types of causes. And to attend to all the needs. And so, for example, when I say Herculean, the hospitality sector is a good place to start. You think about all the workers that are low-wage workers in the hospitality sector. Right now, hotel occupancy alone should be about 70 to 80%. It's 20 to 30%. It's a bad situation. It's no less acute in the restaurant sector. A lot of people needing a lot of help in a lot of ways, in a lot of different places. Now, from SDG&E's perspective, could our community relations department distribute $1 million to dozens of nonprofits quickly? Yes, we could. We could do that independently, but we probably would have just made a very small dent in the problem. So we were looking for a multiplier. We were looking for a catalyst. We were looking for a way to spark the kind of philanthropic response that we knew was going to be needed for a very, very, very big and protracted problem. And we found that multiplier, we found that spark in the dedicated staff and the donors of the San Diego Foundation. And so the story goes that Mark and I were having a conversation, and I can't remember exactly when, and I can't remember exactly where, about the foundation and whether it was going to set up a fund to prepare for the coming challenge of COVID. And it'll surprise no one on this virtual room that Mark had already studied Seattle and the fund they set up to meet this challenge. And it will surprise no one in this virtual room that he immediately asked, would SDG&E like to be the first $1 million in that fund? $15 million later, here we are. I think it's a tribute to the leadership of the organization, its ability to multiply and amplify and catalyze a community of philanthropists but it's also something else. And it's something that appealed to me in particular at SDG&E and to my colleagues. We know how difficult it is to do grant making and do it well. In any given year at SDG&E, our department of community relations, we will distribute between $6 and $8 million to between 500 to 600 nonprofits locally. It's a lot of work to manage that number of partnerships. But Connie and her team are among the few in San Diego that have been able to manage over 400 applications, everyone in dire need, immediate need, and to do it very quickly. And so it's the proficiency, it's the speed, the thoughtfulness, the responsiveness to social needs, and the organized response to the COVID challenge that really meant a lot to us and really got our attention and brought us to the foundation. So we tip our hats to that department and to the entire foundation for the work that they have done so far, and certainly for the work that is yet to come. And one of the things that was most impressive in this process is how somehow we managed to hit the nail on the head with what San Diego most needed in setting the grant making guidelines for where we needed to be, the structure we were going to put together, and also where we needed to direct resources immediately. So it's not really a complicated idea, but really the best way to do that is ask a lot of people and just listen. And so we did that. And so at SDG&E, we had been spending a number of weeks asking our community partners what they needed. You know, what were they seeing that was new? And after talking to them, it was very clear that it wasn't the STEM program for refugee girls that they needed. What they needed was food. What they needed was income assistance. What they needed was access to resources that, for example, for their families. And for example, if you are a refugee family that you've never applied for anything, for unemployment benefits or anything like that, that you didn't have much of a chance of doing it on your own. This is a completely new world for you. So the foundation was receiving a lot of that same feedback from the folks that it had funded over many, many years. And so we kind of came together, and that's really how the grant making priorities came to be. It's just really a process of asking a lot of questions and listening to people, and then turning that input, turning that feedback, that information into some very critical areas, what we thought we needed to get to and get to fast as a community of philanthropy. One was food assistance, obviously. You know, until the cavalry was on its way from Washington through the CARES Act and the like, we had a space of about 6 to 8 weeks at least, where we had to figure it out and figure it out quick. And Connie and her team did that. The second one was income assistance. And we started with some initial funds, grants to the Worker Assistance Initiative at the United Way, which was important because there were a lot of folks that in the hospitality industry that had no cash in their pocket whatsoever. They had very quickly depleted all their savings, again, low-wage workers, and they needed to get to the CVS to buy some Dimetap or whatever it might be. And just a few bucks in your pocket makes all the difference. And also a little bit of rent assistance and the utility assistance and the like. And then over time, there were a number of emergent needs that we were able to get to. But that's the story of how SDG&E came to the San Diego Foundation. It's a story of an incredibly resilient and learning organization at the San Diego Foundation. And it's really the story of how the foundation acted very quickly to be able to get those initial needs, to identify those grant-making priorities, and make it happen for the San Diego region. Thank you, Connie.
Well, I think everybody on this call can understand why all of us are so grateful to Pedro and why we really love working with him. So I'm just going to talk a little bit more about how we proceeded to build a grant-making program and what the results have been to date. And as we were thinking about this enormous responsibility, as all of us in the foundation were thinking about this enormous responsibility to raise but also deploy the funds in the most impactful way. We really took heart in the recently approved mission. This was approved by our Board of Governors. This is the new mission for the San Diego Foundation: to inspire enduring philanthropy and enable community solutions. And in addition to that, we also had new guiding principles. And I believe the primary author of these principles is on this call. So Elizabeth Eisner, a shout out to you, because this has been our touchstone in terms of how we approach these grants. And maybe I'll just take a moment so all of you can have an opportunity to read this. So little did we know that we would have the COVID crisis to put these principles into practice, but I hope you can hear that, you know, we really believe it's important for the foundation to approach this work with humility and respect for the communities that we're working with, and to develop strong cross-sector partnerships with government, business, and donors, and all the partners that we collaborate with. And that this has been an organic process where we've had to really think deeply about what we're learning and work on applying it to the best of our ability. So at a high level, these are our 4 goals in the grant making process. First of all, we embraced the opportunity to practice trust-based philanthropy. And that meant that we need to put our trust in the applicants themselves and not create barriers to their feeling comfortable and capable of receiving grants from us. So simplifying applications, simplifying reporting processes, and not having the usual 3-month-long review process were top of mind for us. We wanted to reduce the distance between ourselves and the community. In addition, we knew, because of the urgent needs, we needed to design for both speed and scale. And here again is where SDG&E got us launched in the right direction. We knew that financial assistance was desperately needed by so many people. And so we used the SDG&E's model of emergency assistance with utility bills as our model for identifying community-based partners who were skillful at helping individuals with financial needs and in awarding funds in a very responsible way. So we piggybacked on that group of nonprofits to get funds out quickly in the first few weeks. And then as we began to learn more and more of the needs in the community, we broadened that network of expert sources for knowledge and insight, and sought out data from 211, talked with community leaders in the faith-based community, in the food community, and found those places where deeply caring organizations were already working together on solving community problems. And then in addition, we always talk to all the grantees and ask them what they're learning, what they're seeing, who else should we be funding, so that we constantly take in information and evaluate the strategy, whether or not our strategy is encompassing what the current needs are, not just the needs that we've seen in the past. So these are the basic goals. So to date, we have granted over $10 million. We have many more applications than we've been able to fund, so 500, whereas we've granted about 140 of those applications. The amounts requested, you can see the range is quite large, 6,000 to 2.7 million. And the average request, though, is around $80,000, which is very close to the amount that we've actually granted. So that our grants tend to be plus or minus 100,000, with a few outlier exceptions, thanks to the extremely generous nature of some of our corporate funders. We've been able to make several large six-figure gifts. So there is still on record $41 million of need. So our 10 million is only reaching a portion of that. We thought you'd like to see how the money has been allocated in terms of purpose. And not surprisingly, as Pedro mentioned, financial assistance is first and foremost. What this doesn't show, however, is the vast variety of organizations that we have funded to help provide financial assistance to individuals and families. The other large category is food security, and that, of course, is still the #1 need in the region, and we know that there's more opportunity to make a difference there. But one of the new areas that emerged, certainly after the schools shut down, is the need to help supplement the technology that students had access to, especially students that live in communities that do not have access to laptops and Chromebooks, especially those students that don't have access to internet on a consistent basis. And so they not only don't have or let me put it another way, even after they may have the hardware, they may not have the financial wherewithal to pay for the internet connectivity, which would allow them to continue their schoolwork. So that's been a high priority of our granting in the more recent weeks. And then, of course, as COVID-19 testing became available, we started to support that. And we also continue to support child care and our partners who are, again, building these communities of support across the region. Just to put more of a face on the people we are hard at work to serve. Obviously, people who have lost income or are out of work. Children are a high priority, families, students, people of color, immigrants and refugees. We know that a number of these areas were serious issues or serious opportunities for change before COVID-19. Seniors also need our support, especially those in social isolation. And then people who really are battling more than just food insecurity, but have medical conditions, are at the risk of losing their home. And as we've been seeing more recently, at risk of being victims of domestic violence. So in addition to some of that more serious and sobering work, we've also had the opportunity to do some, really fun and exciting innovations. So one of our first ones was to convert a legacy fund at the San Diego Foundation that had been dedicated to buying milk for schools, to bring that into the 21st century and start to really jumpstart the food distribution that was happening at schools that were being closed. And our extraordinary partner in deploying those resources is the San Diego Hunger Coalition. They did all the heavy lifting for that. Another exciting partnership is High Road Kitchens, which was brought to us by the San Diego Workforce Partnership and highlighted by the State Secretary of Labor and Governor Newsom as a way to restore restaurants and turn them into higher production kitchens to provide free meals, but more importantly, employment for the vast numbers of restaurant workers who've been affected by the crisis. But the reason why it's called High Road is that the people who are running this program are working with the restaurant owners to work on financial sustainability to be able to pay a living wage to the restaurant workers so that the whole enterprise and their employees have a more sustainable future. And then the third one I'll just take a moment to highlight is the Arts and Culture Challenge Fund. We have long had at the San Diego Foundation a fund dedicated to artists, especially individual artists or independent artists who often find it challenging to find funding for their life's work. That fund has been with us for quite a while, but thanks to the principal sponsor for that fund, we were able to reach the decision that this was probably the time to redeploy that fund as well to meet emergency needs in the arts community and join with the City of San Diego Commission of Arts and Culture. And then we also had a very generous partner, Classy, who is a global supplier of fundraising programs, donated their services to bring the Arts and Culture Challenge Grant to life online. So before we close, Pedro and I thought it would be, we'd like to take the opportunity, let's put it that way, you don't have a choice, you have to listen to us. We wanted to take the opportunity to share with you what we think are some of the most valuable lessons we've learned during these 8 weeks. So Pedro, I'll pass back to you.
Thank you, Connie. You know, this is one of my favorite quotes on the planet. And if Marshall Goldsmith is listening and I didn't quite get it right, well, I promise to buy some consonants and vowels and fix it later. But this is exactly what it means. It means none of us is as smart as all of us. And one of the lessons and takeaways from the process of the grant making for the COVID-19 Community Response Fund is precisely that when you get a lot of people together in an organized fashion, you can do a lot better than just one person or two people or three people looking at a problem and trying to fix it. So the process here actually has 4 different stops. And so whether it's more than just accountability, right? You have the Connie's group that takes in the applications, takes a look at the applications, looks at the criteria that the Leadership Council had set up, figures out sort of what's the most immediate need. It goes back and forth with the applicant, gets more information where they need to gets a sense of what where they're trying to go. And then they place that for the granting committee for the consideration of the members of the granting committee. And should it be approved, it then moves to the executive committee for approval. And you get another fresh set of eyes on that. You get more people that are part of that, all of us none of us as smart as all of us. And then for grants above $100,000, it goes to a vote of the officers of the San Diego Foundation. That many diverse people looking at any given application is going to get you a better product. And that is one of the beautiful things of this process, that it brings together a lot of views, a lot of talent, a lot of perspectives. It brings a lot of depth of folks that run very large organizations as well. It brings a lot of scrutiny, which is a good thing. That's not a bad thing at all. And it builds on the very reliant operations, the very thorough operation of the directors that take a look at these applications from the get-go. There's one other thing also that's important in this, is that it's a very flexible process. You recall that when we started out, our grant-making priorities were food first, income assistance, and then rent and utility assistance was a third. And they kind of morphed over time a little bit, but still it was food and financial assistance. As we figured out over time that we saw that the schools were not going to reopen anytime soon, and they were going online, this process had the ability to learn. It had the ability to adjust, to reset priorities or add priorities to the work of the foundation. And so once we, for example, saw that those schools were not going to open, we learned that, and we adapted to the needs of the digital divide. And a number of school districts, as Connie mentioned, that some had devices, some did not have devices, and some had devices and couldn't connect those devices to Wi-Fi, to the internet. And so being able to pull together folks to try to meet that challenge was a great thing. Because the schools were out, again, we had a lot of essential workers that had childcare challenges. We were able to think about sort of how to meet that challenge with the support of a dedicated group of donors and the very smart people in Connie's shop that were having the conversations that you need to be able to have to find those solutions. And then recently, with the entire move to reopen the economy, there's a lot of folks that are thinking a little bit differently about that. And what I mean by that is that if all we do is rebuild or hope to recover or rebuild what we had already, what was before COVID, we're likely not going to be able to get back there, because it's a very different world with a whole bunch of what we're doing now, virtual resources that people are learning to use. Some parts of the economy that aren't going to come back in 2, 3, or 4 months. Hospitality, it may be 2 or 3 years. The airline industry, same thing, 2 or 3 years. So there's a lot of stickiness in there. And in all of that, there is a role for focusing on the most vulnerable people in our economy. And a lot of those folks are what we call opportunity youth, kids between the ages of 18 and 26, that are the people that before COVID were having a terrible time finding internships, terrible time finding jobs. And during COVID, it's even more difficult. And so we have the ability to learn through this process, and it's because of the very dedicated people that have been built into it, the many dedicated people that have been built into it, and that because of that process serve the San Diego region very, very, very well.
Thanks, Pedro. And not to gild the lily here, but just to share a few more closing thoughts on this section. This is a quote that I was reintroduced to recently. And I think, it is a perspective that we need to take going forward, that we want 100 years of prosperity and we need to grow our people. Another lesson that I learned is it really helps to have a tremendously talented and courageous team. And Katie, Lydia, and Michelle are dynamos and values-based leader. And every single person in the foundation has been doing, working long hours, stretching their brains, and really taking great pride and responsibility in the work that they're doing. But this process has afforded Katie, Lydia, and Michelle the opportunity to become even more vitally connected with so many nonprofits and community leaders. And they have a tremendous storehouse of talent and knowledge to assist donors and our partners. And then just to reiterate Pedro's last comment, we need to start looking at building for the long term. And that means shifting a little bit from emergency response to capacity building and cross-sector resilience strategies. And we look forward to sharing more of those in the future. So now it's my privilege to introduce Jim, who's our Chief Financial Officer, so that he can talk about this program that is definitely building for the future.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I'm Jim Howell, the Chief Financial Officer of the San Diego Foundation. And Connie and Pedro, thank you very much for the overview of all the great work with the grant programs. Today, I'm going to present an overview of the Small Business and Nonprofit Loan Program. And as Pedro mentioned, we are really looking for multipliers with respects to loans that will be extended to organizations in San Diego County. We have the opportunity to be working with state guaranteed funds that are very helpful to the CDFI partners locally. We have subordinated funding additionally available through the San Diego Foundation, and just a great collection of partners, mission-driven finance, one of the best impact investing organizations in the country, LISC, Axion, 2 local CDFIs, Cal Southern, who can pull on state guaranteed funds, and the Small Business Development Center. So it really is a collective effort and truly unique in California, what we're doing. So specific to the funding that's provided from the San Diego Foundation Board of Governors through action that was taken at the end of April. And I would consider really the month of May to be a structural and program development month. We'll hear more from David Lynn as we talk about the operational processes and actually taking applications, sourcing, and underwriting loans. But we have a program that is governed by a loan committee consisting of David. You'll hear more from David in just a minute. Connie, who you heard from earlier in this presentation, Atul Patel, treasurer of PriceSmart. Atul is also the finance committee chair at Alliance Healthcare Foundation. They're a partner with us on this program. And 2 San Diego Foundation Board of Governor members, Donna Marie Robinson and Cliff Shearson, both who are highly experienced professionals who have served in banking and investment capacities locally in San Diego, and myself. So specific to the loan program and the current resources available, certainly we expect to expand upon the capital that's available. I mentioned the $5 million dedicated from the San Diego Foundation Board of Governors. That's specifically for nonprofit loans, generally $100,000 and above. And we certainly look to leverage other banking partners who may commit alongside of us in a senior capacity and hope to grow that by several multiples that could wind up being 10 million, 15 million, et cetera. And in addition, at the end of April, the county supervisors approved a $5 million commitment for small businesses and nonprofits located in the unincorporated region of San Diego County. Generally, those loans will be $50,000 or less, and they'll be underwritten and serviced in connection with our CDFI partner, Axion. So we are very near to Axion being able to open applications, begin underwriting and funding loans, and they will be very, very busy. There'll be hundreds of loans extended over the summer months. And really, we are continuing to seek additional funds to make this a broad county-wide effort. So from here, I'll turn it over to David Lynn.
Thank you, Jim. Glad to be partnered with the San Diego Foundation on this exciting effort. So as Jim mentioned, there's a couple of programs. One is the small business loan program being administered by Acción. We are specifically talking about the nonprofit loan program available through the capital from the San Diego Foundation in partnership with Mission Driven Finance and other partners. We are working through all of the final criteria. So everything's going to be coming out over the next week or so, same as the Acción program. We are expecting to take applications within a couple weeks, in addition to having a more detailed info session about what's going on here. But this is really designed to be loans for nonprofits in San Diego County. That's bridge financing as they're reopening, repurposing capacity, starting to see inbound revenue, where we can help them ramp back up. This is not designed to be a grant or a forgivable loan program like the PPP. This is designed to work alongside the wonderful grant programs that Connie and Pedro talked about, where we think that we can extend how much capital we can put out into the community and the ability to recycle it for future nonprofits as well. The base criteria, again, this is for nonprofits. They need to be actively working in San Diego County, not necessarily headquartered here, but serving clients, and that there's a clear ability to repay within 2.5 years. And really, as we start seeing the applications, the preference is for those where we know this capital that's going into them is going to help people that are in most critical need right now as we're coming out of this crisis for the next couple of years. Finally, for all of you that have nonprofits in your network, are a nonprofit, are funders, please have them go to the San Diego SBNLP.org website. There's an interest form where you can put in your email address and basic information so that we keep you updated as these applications come out, both for nonprofits and small businesses. And as Jim said, the goal is that we really get this program where there's currently about 10 million committed. Our goal is to get it to 30 to 40 million overall, with various different buckets and eligibility for different small businesses and nonprofits. So as that grows, we will continue to keep people updated through that San Diego SBNLP website. So please put your information in there so everybody can hear as the programs evolve. And finally, and then I think we have time for Q&A, want to introduce my friend Brian Zumbano.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining us. It's great to see so many people come. And as Connie and Pedro mentioned earlier, everything we've been able to accomplish is because of the generosity of our donors. And it's great to see so many of you join us today as well. And thank you for all your support. So to date, the COVID-19 Community Response Fund has exceeded $14.5 million in contributions and 11 in grants, which is amazing. And I want to thank Pedro and SDG&E as well. Without their initial seed funding, I don't know how much of that would have happened. It really launched the fund, and we continue to be appreciative and thankful for all their generosity. Mark also mentioned the Hervey Family Foundation. There is still a couple $100,000 left in their $1.5 million match. So if anyone is interested or knows anyone who wants to take advantage of their generosity, that would be great as well. One of the cool parts of all of this is that a lot of the funding, I believe somewhere in the area of 6 to 7 million of what's been raised has been from donor advised fund holders at the San Diego Foundation. So it's been a wonderful collective effort. And there's a lot of ways, whether you're a fund holder at the foundation or not, or an organization, a foundation, a corporation, that you can help. One is, thankfully, because of the new CARES Act, not only is there a lot of dollars flowing to help communities, but there's a lot of things in there to encourage philanthropic giving. For example, you can claim up to $300 in a cash contribution if you don't itemize, which is new. Also, for those who do itemize, you can claim up to 100% of your adjusted gross income, as opposed to 60% prior. This is only just for 2020. So there's a lot of other benefits in the CARES package, but it's great to see that philanthropy is being encouraged in response to what we're trying to do as a community. So we'll say also, while we think the San Diego Foundation COVID-19 Community Response Fund is a wonderful way to do it, there's other ways to give back to the community as well, directly to your nonprofits. And we always say, if you do, try to allow them, as Connie mentioned before, trust-based philanthropy, allow them to have it be unrestricted dollars. Trust the nonprofits that you've supported, that they are doing the great work they are, because believe us, they are doing that great work. And ask others to join. It's one of the fun parts of philanthropy is engaging others, friends, family, colleagues, and leveraging things like matches and wonderful ways to come together. It's great, particularly in San Diego, a very philanthropic community, that we can all come together and be side by side with our neighbors and colleagues, helping those in our community who need it the most. And for those who need it the most, we know, in particular at the foundation, get a lot of calls from individuals who need support. And if you know of anyone who does need support, two areas for resources we direct folks to are not only the county, but also an organization, 211, which can provide individuals information about the area resources and nonprofits they need. So all of that information, whether you want to give, receive, find out more, sdfoundation.org/COVID-19 is where we house all of those wonderful pieces of information and opportunities. As I mentioned, there's still the opportunity to double your gift. So via the Hervey match, so that's a great opportunity as well. And you can also participate in impact investing via the loan program. It's a program that not only can nonprofits and small business receive funding from, but interested donors can also help increase our ability to make that kind of recovery loans to the community by making a contribution. So lots of good stuff to do. And with that, I am going to segue into a question and answer area. I believe we have 4 full minutes, so we'll see what we can accomplish in that time. If I don't get the chance to, before we wrap, thank everyone, and do want to just answer a couple questions we know that did come in. One of which is, is there a timeline for the Community Response Fund? That's actually a great question. We initially launched it to be emergency response funding, and as we are shifting from emergency needs to more long-term sustainable needs, there's a lot more work to be done on that front. So I can say, in terms of the fundraising side, no, we're not stopping anytime soon. This is the beginning. This is not the end, and the community very much needs that kind of support. So we will be here raising money and granting money until hopefully that wonderful day when our community no longer needs it for this purpose. And then we go back to all the great work we continued to do beforehand. One last one, I think it is Connie might be best for this one, and then perhaps throw it to Mark for a wrap. What is the funding gap? What's the funding gap between in terms of what's been raised and what is still out there in terms of need that we've seen? Connie, do you mind taking that one and then maybe throwing it over to Mark?
Sure. So again, if we just judge the volume of dollars that have been requested by the applications we have in hand, it's about a $30 million gap, but growing. We are continuing to get new applications all the time because we started this process as a rolling process. As more money comes in, as we have more ability to make grants, we continue to revisit the grants we've received, or excuse me, the applications we've received. So Mark, you want to take us home?
Thanks, Connie. I will when I see myself in speaker view, which will probably be here anytime now. Well, I'm just going to, given that it's 3:58 and we want to stay right on schedule with all of you, I'll begin this wrap up. I want to again thank all of our great speakers, especially Pedro Villegas and David Lynn, and then of course from our team, Connie Matsui, Jim Howell, and Brian Zumbano. I'm grateful to have these great subject matter experts who are with us either as volunteers or as staff members, and it's just a great team. As I begin my second year with the foundation, I just know that I'm so grateful for this opportunity to lead this team doing this really important work that is so necessary and needed throughout San Diego. And I just want to be able to say to all of you that you can count on the San Diego Foundation to continue to this good work. And at some point we will pivot to new work, but our sole focus right now is on the emergency response that is so needed here in San Diego to provide that comfort, relief, and hope that so many of our residents and friends and neighbors need at this time. So thank you for being with us. Please watch out for future webinars coming from the San Diego Foundation. We will be back to you to share more information, to engage with you, and to hear and answer your questions. So thank you for being with us, and we're grateful to be here on your behalf. Goodbye.